Tonight, on History's Greatest Mysteries, he was an action hero, a cultural icon, a martial arts legend on the cusp of superstardom.
What really killed Bruce Lee? Everyone knows the legend, but only one man trained beside him during his final days, and what he saw was terrifying. A body pushed beyond its limits, footage erased, warnings ignored, and a secret obsession that may have cost Bruce his life. This isn't fan theory. This is firsthand. And once you hear what Bolo Yeung finally reveals, you'll never look at Bruce Lee, or his death, the same way again.
Two of the trace metals most commonly associated with poison. It makes me wonder if Bruce Lee's death was somehow associated with foul play.
The man who trained beside a legend. Bolo Yeung wasn't just another actor who happened to cross paths with Bruce Lee. That's the first thing people get wrong.
Show me a kung fu high kick.
Long before cameras rolled, long before Enter the Dragon became myth, Bolo was already deep inside a world that most people only pretend to understand. Hardcore training, obsessive discipline, bodies pushed past comfort and sometimes past safety, and that's exactly why his words still carry weight today. Bolo, born Yang Si, was a competitive bodybuilder in Hong Kong when Bruce Lee was quietly redefining what the human body could do. While the public saw Bruce as lightning fast and untouchable, Bolo saw something else up close. The routines, the strain, the way Bruce never really stopped. Not after filming, not after training, not even when his body clearly needed it. Here's a detail most fans don't talk about. Bruce didn't train like other martial artists. He trained like someone racing against time. Multiple sessions a day. Weights, striking drills, road work, stretching, philosophy, notes scribbled late at night. Bolo later said Bruce's speed wasn't just impressive, it was alarming, almost unnatural, as if he was forcing his nervous system to keep up with his ambition. And here's where things start to feel unsettling. On the set of Enter the Dragon, Bruce wasn't slowing down. He was doing takes again and again, even when directors were satisfied. Between scenes, he trained. When others rested, he drilled. Bolo noticed Bruce sweating excessively, drinking very little water, cutting weight aggressively. This wasn't rumor. Multiple crew members later confirmed Bruce had become obsessed with staying lean, almost skeletal by his own standards. Now layer in the pressure. Hollywood expectations, carrying an entire culture on his back, proving himself in a system that had dismissed him for years. Bruce wasn't just making a movie. He believed he was fighting a war of representation, and wars don't allow rest. Theories began quietly. Years later, some whispered Bruce had pushed his body into a dangerous metabolic state. Others claimed severe dehydration may have played a role. There were even discussions about heat sensitivity after his sweat glands were partially removed earlier in his career. None of this was public back then, but Bolo saw the warning signs in real time. And the most chilling part, according to people close to Bruce, including Bolo, he brushed off concern with a smile. Said he was fine, said pain was temporary, said discipline conquered all. But what happens when discipline becomes obsession? That question hangs heavy. Because this story doesn't start with death. It starts with a man who refused to stop running, even when his body was quietly begging him to.
Bruce Lee, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme, and then who? After Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is next? Nobody. Why?
The vanishing fight scene, and the missing footage that still haunts fans. Now here's where things start getting strange. If Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung trained together, respected each other, and shared screen time in Enter the Dragon, why is their actual fight missing from the movie? That's not a rumor, that's a real question. Because footage of Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung going toe-to-toe was reportedly shot, choreographed, practiced, even witnessed by crew members. But in the final cut, nothing, just whispers. According to multiple behind-the-scenes reports, Bruce specifically wanted Bolo to bring raw intimidation to the film, not just as an actor but as a symbol of brute power, the yin to Bruce's speed-driven yang. And during filming, they reportedly did shoot a short, intense, one-on-one sequence. But for reasons never officially explained, that footage didn't make it past the editing room. Director Robert Klaus never confirmed it publicly. Golden Harvest executives stayed quiet. So where is it? To this day, fans and film historians speculate about what happened. Some say the footage was cut for pacing. Others think it was removed because it made Bruce look too vulnerable. And then there are the darker theories, that the footage was intentionally buried after Bruce's death because it showed too much. Maybe a different side of him. Maybe something he didn't want the world to see. Bolo himself remained silent for years on the matter, but in later interviews, he hinted at it. He didn't confirm the fight existed, but he never denied it either. When asked directly, he simply smiled and said, Bruce knew what looked good on camera, He didn't waste time, which raises another question. If that footage was real, what else was shot and buried? Multiple Bruce Lee films have been surrounded by missing reels, alternate scenes, and unfinished edits, Game of Death being the most infamous. But Enter the Dragon was supposed to be the polished Hollywood breakthrough, the clean cut. So how did something so massive, a fight between two icons, vanish without a trace? There are even fringe rumors that lost reels still exist in private collections, held by former editors, stunt coordinators, or studio insiders. But nothing has ever surfaced. No timestamp, no celluloid frame, just legend. The strange case of Bruce Lee's missing sweat glands. Now this is the part that still stuns people. A lot of fans don't know this, but according to multiple biographies and leaked Hong Kong medical reports, Bruce Lee reportedly underwent a surgical procedure to remove his sweat glands from his underarms. Why? For one simple reason: he didn't want visible pit stains on camera. Let that sink in for a second. Bruce was so obsessed with his on-screen image, so laser-focused on perfection, that even the thought of sweat patches distracted him. On the surface it sounds harmless, just cosmetic, but behind that decision might lie the most overlooked clue in the mystery of his death. Because think about this. What happens when one of the body's main cooling systems is gone? When you're training like a machine, filming under intense lights in tropical Hong Kong heat, and dehydrated, and cutting weight, and you can't sweat properly? Doctors have weighed in since. Several have pointed to the possibility of heat stroke or thermoregulation failure. With impaired sweat glands, Bruce may have been more vulnerable to overheating than anyone realized. That's not fan fiction, that's science. And then layer this on top. Weeks before his death, Bruce had already collapsed once. In May 1973, during a dubbing session, he experienced brain swelling, disorientation, and was rushed to the hospital. Sound familiar? Because it is. That was the first warning shot. Cerebral edema, same as what killed him in July. But what did Bruce do after the first collapse? He shrugged it off, went back to work, kept pushing, because that's who he was. Rest was weakness. Pain was a test. He didn't just perform martial arts, he lived inside its extremes. And here's where things take an eerie turn. Some insiders believe Bruce may have been experimenting with diuretics, substances that flush water out of the body to maintain that shredded physique. Combine that with excessive sweating, or lack of it, Hong Kong humidity, and non-stop physical activity, and the body reaches a breaking point. The Bruce Lee curse. What was he really running from? There's one angle people rarely talk about out loud, because it's not about science or training or even Hollywood. It's about fear, a fear Bruce Lee allegedly carried with him until the very end, that he was being watched, followed, maybe even hunted. Some call it superstition, others call it the Bruce Lee curse. Let's rewind. Bruce's family had already suffered tragedy long before Enter the Dragon ever hit theaters. His older brother, also named Bruce, died in infancy. In Chinese culture, this was considered a bad omen. To trick the spirits, his parents gave him the female nickname Sai Fan, meaning Little Phoenix, hoping evil forces would ignore him. And Bruce believed it, deeply. He didn't dismiss spiritual warnings. In fact, several people close to him recalled that he sometimes spoke about an early death like it was already written, destiny, a shadow he couldn't shake. Even creepier, Bruce reportedly told his wife Linda multiple times that he didn't think he'd live past 33. He died at 32. Still think it's all myth? Now look at the timing. Just weeks before his death, Bruce filmed a bizarre, almost prophetic scene for Game of Death, in which his character fakes his own demise, disappears, and returns under a different identity. He even lies in a coffin. That footage still exists. It's chilling. And then there's Brandon Lee, Bruce's son. Charismatic, talented, following in his father's footsteps. He died during the filming of The Crow. Also under mysterious circumstances, a prop gun fired a real projectile, killing him instantly. On set, in front of the crew, father and son, both martial artists. Both rising stars, both gone too soon, both deaths surrounded by questions. Some say it's coincidence, others say it's a curse that runs deeper than genetics. Bruce's secret notebook, and the final pages nobody talks about. Here's something that doesn't get mentioned nearly enough. Bruce Lee's personal training diaries. Not the polished philosophy books like Tao of Jeet Kune Do that hit the shelves after his death.
And basically this is a compilation and organization of Bruce Lee's notes on his philosophies about fighting.
No, we're talking about the raw, handwritten notes Bruce scribbled between filming, sparring, and strategizing his next move. And what was in those final pages? That's the mystery that still has fans digging for answers. Substances that flush water out of the body to maintain that shredded physique. Bruce was obsessive about documenting everything: his diet, routines, injuries, goals, even emotional states. He logged reps down to the second, tracked his reactions to specific foods, He even jotted down mental clarity ratings, almost like he was trying to measure his spirit the same way he measured his speed. He treated his body like an experiment, but what's really wild is what surfaced in the days following his death. According to close friend Dan Inosanto and several later biographers, Bruce's final notebooks showed sudden shifts, not in techniques but in tone. Instead of clean, tactical writing, his last entries were scattered, repetitive, almost frantic. One line appeared over and over. Rest is a weapon. What was Bruce running from? Was he trying to convince himself to slow down? Or was it a warning, a cry for help only the pages could hear? And then there's the weirdest part. Multiple pages were missing, ripped out, gone. Bruce's wife, Linda, confirmed that certain entries were never recovered. Some claim they were removed before the police even got to his apartment. Others say studio executives had access before investigators did. To this day, nobody knows who took those pages or why. The whispered autopsy and the detail that didn't add up. Here's a detail that never made the headlines, but keeps popping up in hushed interviews and obscure forum threads. According to multiple eyewitnesses and off-record conversations with Hong Kong medical staff, Bruce Lee's body was discovered with 0 water in his stomach.
The truth about Bruce's death is that for several years, starting in 1970 when he hurt his back, he had to take pain pills to alleviate the intense pain that he had from the lower back injury.
Not even a drop. That fact alone might not sound like much, until you realize what that implies. Bruce had been filming all day in sweltering heat. He was cutting weight, training, reviewing Game of Death scenes with Betty Ting Pei. He even complained of a splitting headache, a symptom often linked to severe dehydration. And yet, during the autopsy, his stomach contents reportedly revealed no food and no water. Now pause for a second. Why wasn't he drinking? Was he purposely avoiding water to stay lean for the camera? Was he relying on diuretics or other extreme weight-cutting methods? Or, and here's the question that gives people chills, was he following a secret regimen? One that even his closest friends didn't fully understand? Possibly American. And Bruce, who had been preparing to make his full return to Hollywood, sounded shaken after hanging up. Some say he paced, others say he grew quiet. But the moment passed, and nobody pressed him about it. What's strange is that there's no official phone record of this call. It wasn't documented by police nor included in the initial reports. But multiple people close to Bruce, including 2 of Betty's neighbors, later mentioned hearing him talking animatedly on the phone shortly before his collapse. The mysterious insurance policy that raised eyebrows. Here's something most people never heard about. And once you know it, it's hard to unknow. Just months before Bruce Lee's death, he quietly signed a multi-million-dollar life insurance policy. On paper, that might seem like a smart move. Bruce had a young family, international deals lined up, and a skyrocketing career. But the timing, that's what gets people talking, because this wasn't a basic policy. According to leaked reports and deep-dive investigations by several Hong Kong journalists, Bruce's coverage included a clause for accidental sudden death in foreign countries. That's specific. Too specific, some would say. And get this. Just weeks before he passed, Bruce allegedly visited a second office to review the terms. Why the urgency? What did he know? Some insiders, including a former business associate from Golden Harvest, later claimed Bruce had received threatening messages tied to his financial independence. He had been pulling away from traditional studio contracts, setting up his own production firm, and was in the early stages of negotiating a distribution deal with American investors. In other words, he was becoming untouchable, powerful, solo, uncontrolled dot. And that kind of independence? It doesn't sit well with people who built their empires off gatekeeping. The real bombshell came later when reporters tried to access the payout documents. Most of the information was sealed, completely redacted. Even Bruce's own family didn't know the full value or beneficiaries of the final policy. To this day, nobody outside that circle knows who collected, or how much. And that's not all. One of Bruce's longtime attorneys who helped draft the contract mysteriously left Hong Kong just weeks after the death. Relocated. No public statement. No interviews. Just gone. The rushed funeral. And why the world wasn't allowed to linger. Here's something that still doesn't sit right with a lot of people. Bruce Lee's death shook the planet, yet everything that followed moved fast. Too fast. The funeral arrangements, the official statements, the closure. It all happened at a pace that left very little room for questions, let alone answers. Within days, Bruce's body was flown out. Public access was limited. Press briefings were brief. And crucially, there was no prolonged public viewing in Hong Kong, despite his status as the biggest star in Asia at the time.
Bruce Lee was the dreamer. I'm going to Hollywood, I'm going to be a movie star. We didn't realize how totally focused, how totally intense he was on achieving this dream.
For a man whose life was lived under a microscope, death suddenly came with a curtain. Some journalists later claimed they were discouraged from digging, not threatened outright, just quietly stonewalled. Requests for deeper medical clarification were redirected. Questions about earlier collapses were brushed aside. The message was subtle but clear. The story was finished. But insiders noticed something else. Several of Bruce's closest training partners were not present at the immediate proceedings. Travel was delayed. Notifications came late. Even Bolo Yeung, who would later speak cautiously about Bruce's condition, was reportedly informed after key decisions had already been made. That timing matters. Why the rush? One theory is simple damage control. Enter the Dragon was about to release globally. A clean narrative protected the film, the studios, and Bruce's legacy as an unstoppable icon. Complications, exhaustion, medical ambiguity, human limits didn't sell myth. Legends don't die messy deaths. They die suddenly, quietly, definitively. And then there's the other theory, that the people managing Bruce's affairs feared what might surface if time was allowed. If more doctors spoke, if more trainers compared notes, if journalists connected dots between the May collapse and July death. Time is dangerous when stories don't align. So they moved quickly, closed ranks, let the world grieve, but not investigate. Hit subscribe and click the card on your screen now.